You know, when most people think about Bitcoin, they picture this old, dusty tech, right? Kind of like digital gold that just sits there, never changing. But honestly, that couldn't be more wrong. Behind the curtain, there's this incredibly vibrant world of innovation, of debate, and constant upgrades. So today, we're going to dive into the tech that's actually keeping Bitcoin way ahead of the game.
So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll tackle that myth about Bitcoin being old tech. Then, we're jumping straight into the big challenges. We're talking speed, scale, and privacy, and we'll look at the seriously clever solutions being built to handle them. And finally, we'll look to the horizon to see how Bitcoin is being armored up against some pretty wild future threats.
Okay, so the first thing you really have to get is that Bitcoin isn't just a finished piece of software. It's more like a living, breathing protocol. And its future? Well, that's being debated constantly by a global community of developers. And that debate really boils down to two main ideas.
And this right here is the fundamental tension in the Bitcoin world. On one side, you've got the idea of ossification, the belief that the core rules should be set in stone, totally unchangeable, for ultimate stability. But on the other side, you've got evolution, the idea that to survive, Bitcoin has to adapt and improve. This push and pull is basically the engine behind every single upgrade we're about to talk about.
So, if we're talking about evolving, what's the number one hurdle? Well, it's got to be scaling. I'm sure you've heard the biggest knock against it. Why on earth is it so slow compared to, just swiping your credit card?
Exactly this, right? It's the question everyone asks. A credit card feels instantaneous, but a Bitcoin transaction can take several minutes, maybe even longer, to get that final confirmation. So, is this just a fatal flaw in the design, or is there something deeper going on?
Well, the answer is that slowness is a deliberate choice. It's actually a feature, not a bug. See, Bitcoin puts security and decentralization above absolutely everything else. Miners have to follow these incredibly strict consensus rules to make sure every single transaction is valid. That takes time, sure, but it's the very thing that makes the network rock solid and secure. It's a trade-off. You get unmatched security, and in exchange, you accept slower final settlement.
So, if you can't just speed up the main network without wrecking its security, how do you make it fast enough for, say, buying a cup of coffee? Well, the answer is brilliant. You don't change the foundation. You build new layers right on top of it.
And the main way these new layers get added is through something called a soft fork. The best way to think about it is like an update to an app on your phone. Your old version still works just fine, you just can't use the cool new feature. It's a super clever way to upgrade the network without causing a massive split.
Now, one of the most powerful upgrades enabled by soft forks is the idea of Layer 2 solutions. You know what it's like? It's kind of like running a bar tab. You don't make the bartender swipe your card for every single beer, right? You open a tab, you have a bunch of off-chain drinks, and then you settle up with one single payment at the end of the night. Layer 2s are just like that, but for Bitcoin.
The most famous Layer 2 is the Lightning Network. Here's the simple version of how it works. You and a friend open a payment channel. That's just one transaction on the main blockchain. Once it's open, you two can send money back and forth instantly for practically no fees. All of this happens off-chain. Then, whenever you're done, you close the channel, and only the final balance gets recorded back on the super secure main blockchain. It's literally the best of both worlds. You get lightning speed and low costs, all anchored to Bitcoin's legendary security.
Okay, so we've established that Bitcoin can be fast, but can it be private? The fact that every transaction is on a public ledger, well, that brings up a whole other can of worms for anyone who values their financial privacy.
And this is where we have to get really clear on something. Bitcoin is not anonymous, it's pseudonymous. Your real name isn't attached to your transactions, but your Bitcoin address, your pseudonym, is. And if anyone ever links that address to you, they can trace your entire spending history. So how you use Bitcoin becomes critically important. So here's the deal, and it gets to the heart of what you could call the Bitcoin ethos. The number one most effective privacy practice is super simple. Never, ever reuse an address. Any good, modern wallet will automatically generate a brand new address for every single payment you receive. This one little step makes it so much harder for anyone to connect the dots and map out your financial life.
All right, so we've talked scaling and we've talked privacy. But what about the really big, scary, long-term threats? I'm talking about scenarios that sound like they're ripped straight from a sci-fi movie. Well, developers are already on it.
You've probably heard of this one, the infamous 51% attack. This is the nightmare scenario where some bad actor gets control of the majority of the network's mining power. In theory, they could start messing with transactions and causing chaos. It sounds terrifying, right? But don't worry, the network has some serious defenses built in.
There are actually layers of defense here. As a user, the easiest thing you can do for a really big payment is just wait for a few more block confirmations. Simple. You can also use those Layer 2 Lightning channels we talked about, because those can't be rewritten. And then there's the nuclear option. If things got truly serious, the entire community could coordinate to change the fundamental mining algorithm, which would instantly turn all of the attacker's expensive hardware into useless paperweights.
All right. If a 51% attack wasn't sci-fi enough for you, how about this one? The rise of quantum computers. The fear here is that one day a computer could be so powerful it could just break the encryption that protects every single Bitcoin wallet. This is a very real, though very distant threat. And yes, people are already building the solution.
A huge part of the defense plan is a tool called multi-signature, or multisig for short. Instead of a wallet that needs just one key to open, a multisig wallet needs several. Think of it like a high-security bank vault that requires two different managers with two different keys to unlock it at the same time.
And here's the wild part. This tool that we have right now, multisig, is an incredibly powerful defense against a future quantum attack. It makes a hacker's job exponentially harder. I mean, think about it. If an attacker is trying to break in, are they going to go after the wallet that needs one key cracked, or the one that needs 4 or 5 or 7? They're going to go for the low-hanging fruit every single time.
And that's just the defense for today. Looking further down the road, the long-term plan is already in the works. Developers are actively building new types of addresses that are resistant to quantum computers from the ground up. This will almost certainly be rolled out in a future soft fork, completely neutralizing the threat long before it's even a real problem. So as we start to pull all this together, it's pretty clear that far from being some dusty old relic, Bitcoin is actually a system designed from its very core to adapt, evolve, and defend itself.
So let's just quickly hit the big takeaways. First, Bitcoin is not static. It's constantly changing. Second, its biggest hurdles, like scaling and privacy, are being solved with these brilliant layered solutions that preserve its core strength. And third, even those huge existential threats on the horizon have defense plans already in place, all thanks to this global, decentralized community of builders.
And that really brings us to the final and maybe the most important question of all. The tech has proven itself to be unbelievably resilient and adaptable. So the biggest challenge going forward probably isn't technical at all. It's social. Can a massive, worldwide, leaderless community actually continue to agree on how to move forward together? Now that is the real story to watch.